Welcome again to RUInformed, our first lecture series of 2026. And we thank you all for joining us from 2025. It is a vital day to make sure we are introduced to quarterbacking your care. Looking forward to describe what that means for Madeline. Let me introduce Madeline Brown, a financial consultant from Star City Private Wealth. Madeline is a financial advisor. She works for the firm Star City Private Wealth in Roanoke, Virginia. In alliance with Equitable Advisors, Madeline and her team bring a wealth of knowledge and experience in financial planning and investments. Born and raised in the vibrant Star City of the South, Madeline's passion for her community is matched only by her commitment to helping clients unlock their fullest financial potential. Yes, heard it here first. Unlock your financial potential. With her team's careful and detailed approach to analyzing your financial picture, Madeline will guide you through each step of your final journey, be it planning for retirement, funding education, or navigating major life changes. So let's join Madeline today on a journey in the financial services in an industry that she has over a combined experience with her team of professionals of 100 years. You heard it right. Since then, she has dedicated herself to helping clients achieve their financial dreams. Armed with associate's degree in business administration, Madeline also has her Series 7 N66 registrations, as well as all state required life, health, and annuity license. Madeline, quarterbacking my care. I'm excited about you and your team joining us today. How better to start the new year off right to understanding how to be successful financial. I'm going to turn it over to you, Madeline, so you can introduce your team. And again, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Cleo, for the introduction. That was great, and I really appreciate you having me here to present quarterbacking your care to all of the RUI residents and families. Really quick, before I get started, I know that you guys just heard a bit about me from Cleo, but I want to introduce my two teammates that I have on with me that are a huge part of our team's success. First is Ann Taylor Parcell, which is another financial advisor here in our office. She works with our Blue Ridge Financial Partners team. So, Ann Taylor, if you could just wave hello and let everybody know that you are there.
Hi,
And
everyone.
I also have Michelle Page. She is our client service associate who keeps all of us in line and all of our marketing in line and speaks with clients on a daily basis. We could not do what we do every day without her support. So, Michelle, if you could wave hello as
Hey,
well.
good afternoon.
So I chose quarterbacking your care for our presentation today because I'm trying to make this as interactive and not as boring as, hearing about planning for your future sounds. So we're going to try to make this a little Super Bowl themed. I know that may sound a bit cheesy, but hopefully it helps keep everybody's attention. So, not sure who everyone's voting for, rooting for, not voting for, for the Super Bowl. But my team is the Commanders, and we were out long time ago. So we've got Seahawks and the Rams or the Broncos versus the Patriots. I'm not sure who everyone's a fan of, but best of luck to you this weekend.
Go Seahawks.
So quarterbacking your care. As I said before, I've got Ann Taylor on here and Michelle, and looks like I'm having a bit of issues going to the next slide. Cleo, my apologies. Oh, Here we go. So I work for Star City Private Wealth. We are a team of 5 here, and we work under Equitable Advisors. The team was actually started by our fearless leader, who is my mom, Lori Brown. And Star City Private Wealth, like I said, is a team of 5. And Lori started in the business 25 years ago and started Star City Private Wealth almost 2 years ago. Joined with me, like I said, is Ann Taylor Parcell. She is part of Blue Ridge Financial Partners, which is also brokered by Equitable Advisors. And we share office space and do quite a bit of work together. So just a bit of a pregame show. We are in a highly regulated industry, so have to throw some disclosures out there for you guys when you receive this PowerPoint from Cleo later on. So can skip through these two. So starting out strong with our first quarter of quarterbacking your care. So who is ready for the game to start? Your first quarter of your financial plan usually starts around ages 40 to 55. So the big game of when am I going to retire? Am I going to have enough money to retire and pay for my care in the future? A lot of you on this call have probably thought about this extensively, and hopefully if you have family members joining you, maybe they're starting to think about this as well as they're in this age bracket. So the majority of our clients that we meet with, we have several younger clients as well all over the map, but usually start honing in on their financial plan around ages 40 to 55 to start thinking about things like, when do I want to retire? What do I need to do to achieve that goal by? And putting, my financial plan together. So the first step to that is, like I said, your financial plan. So how many of you on here feel like you may be on track for retirement if you have not retired already? I'll let that be kind of a rhetorical question for you. Or maybe how many of you on here, are thinking about paying for your children's education or for your own care? Or on the flip side, how many of you on here are thinking about, am I going to have to help fund my parents' care? So you are about to start a beautiful family, and now you have dependents that rely on you to provide for them in many different ways, including financially. How do you juggle your new responsibilities? A financial program is simply a map or a game plan, and it can help you manage all of your financial obligations. It is the process of prioritizing the allocation of cash resources to help you achieve your goals and dreams for the future. It can certainly give you peace of mind of what otherwise can be a chaotic life. So if we have all of our assets coming in because you are in your earning years, ages 40 to 55, and you do not have a plan for them, things can go off the rails very quickly. So this is the first step of where we start. A financial plan will keep you focused, on track, and coordinate all of your goals. So hopefully you can do all of those things like pay for your children's education, maybe pay for your own education, run a business or fund a business, and still retire and pay for your care one day. So, touchdown. The most important thing in most of your lives are your loved ones. Although paying for care is important and, having a plan in place is important, but your loved ones are probably your utmost top priority in your life. So, it's important you take care of them as well. So one question I like to do, and I'm going to ask Ann Taylor this question, is what is the first thing that you do before you buy a house, Ann Taylor?
First thing I do before buying a house, make sure I can. Well, the first thing I would do is see what I can afford before I even start looking. That
You're
way, I don't get my hopes up.
you're close, but
Um,
that's not where I was going. You bought your house, you have to insure your house.
oh, yes, yes, yes. I
So
thought
you
you were
bought your
talking
house.
basic.
Yes, you have to insure your house. So it's very important you insure yourself for your loved ones. So when you buy a house, before any furniture is bought, before you close, you look at home insurance. So it's the same thing when talking about your financial plan. When we're putting that together, we look at the whole picture and determine if you are insured, and your loved ones are taken care of if something should happen to you. Insurance is not a popular thing to talk about, but it's a huge thing that we need to talk about and force ourselves to talk about because your loved ones are your most important thing in your life. So making sure that they're taken care of is a huge priority. So, timeout. The Seahawks have called a timeout. They're getting close to a touchdown. Um, we want to take a pause and make sure if a major event happens before we're expecting it, if we're ready. So, we've started our financial plan. We're starting to execute that financial plan. But are we protected if we pass away sooner than we think? Or on the flip side, maybe we're, no, we're sick and we're not doing well, and we want to make sure we're still protected. It's extremely important to meet with an estate planning attorney and at least put a basic will and power of attorney together. A popular thought is, okay, I have a will. I do not need to worry about anything else. That is a pretty common misconception. When we meet with clients, we always encourage them to list beneficiaries on their investment accounts. Obviously, their life as well as any banking accounts that they have as well. A beneficiary on any of those accounts directly bypasses the will. So a will is only in place for things like your home, your tangible assets that you have in that home, your cars, or anything that does not have a beneficiary on it. It's extremely important that you update this will every, I would say, 10 to 15 years if possible, because if you don't have a will or you don't have beneficiaries on your account, all of those things will have to flow into your estate and be an extremely big problem for whomever is left to take care of that. Additionally, if you don't have a will or you list your will as beneficiaries, those assets will have to go through probate. And you may have to pay more taxes on those assets than you would necessarily normally do if a beneficiary was listed. So extremely important to take a pause, take a time out. I'm starting to think about my financial plan. I have my insurance in place, but let's make sure all of those things, we have a shield around them and they're protected legally.
I would also add to that, like Madeline said, to absolutely make sure your beneficiaries are up to date on your investment accounts, things of that nature. But to also, if you don't have a contingent beneficiary, it might be a good time to think, should I add somebody as a contingent in case something happens to my primary beneficiary? And that way, hopefully not, but if that day ever came, you would already have somebody listed as a contingent. I met with somebody yesterday that both the beneficiary and the contingent, something had unfortunately they had passed, so we had to update both of those for them. So while it's unlikely, I think it's a great habit to make sure that you have a contingent already on file. That way, you already know in the back of your mind, those accounts are should be taken care of, at least for now. And to always make sure, just do a check-in, whether it be next year, or on a regular basis to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date. So many times we meet with clients and, it might be an ex-spouse or somebody that they should have removed by now. And honestly, they forgot, which it's easy to do. But just making sure that we kind of stay on top of that will make your heirs' lives a lot easier down the road. So just wanted to note that as well.
On the flip side, another misconception that we hear is, okay, I am, this is my spouse. If something happens to me, this goes to my spouse. That is absolutely 100% true if they are listed as a joint owner on that account. But what's important to think about is catastrophes happen. So you never know what could happen to you and a spouse at the same time. You know, so it's important to Ann Taylor's point. Okay, I have a joint account with my spouse. Let me make sure, a contingent, beneficiary is listed on there should something happen to me and my spouse at the same time. So the Bears called a timeout. They've put a slightly new game plan together going into second quarter, which second quarter deals with something that is not fun to talk about, but it is huge to talk about, especially in Cleo's line of work. And I think that she can speak to this, a ton. So who has heard of long-term care? If anybody has heard of long-term care.
Madeline, the second quarter is so important as we learn about purposeful living. And I know our residents that are listening in have done a job well done for that, but preparing for that and helping their children prepare for that. And how can that be used, right? How can that be used to help in a senior living healthcare costs?
Exactly. So, Cleo, what do you think of when you hear long-term care?
When I think of long-term care, I think of the whole continuum from having to go to the hospital to having to have some type of rehab services after to going home with home health or needing a placement in a senior living community like Retirement Unlimited Incorporated or having to go into a skilled nursing facility, depending on the level of services you need.
Exactly, exactly. So, long-term care is broadly defined as care needed to help people who cannot function independently because of a chronic physical or cognitive impairment. Many of you on the call today may have long-term care in place or know somebody who has long-term care in place, or are preparing to use maybe your parents' long-term care policies to help care for them. Essentially, all long-term care is it helps people who cannot fully care for themselves anymore, and it can cover a lot of ground, and it has changed a lot from what long-term care originally was. 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. So it's something that's very important in your game plan to think about while you're still young. So you're never too young to start thinking about this. So, to Cleo's point, there are many different levels of care. But what is long-term care? It helps people with a range of services, whether they need skilled care or somebody to just, take care of them on a daily basis. There's many different levels. There is custodial care, which is going to be maybe, for the most part, you can live pretty independently. But you need somebody coming by every day or twice a day to spend a couple hours and make sure that you are getting the basic things you need taken care of, whether that's cleaning, grocery shopping, making sure you're not leaving the stove on, those very, important things that we don't necessarily always think about that should be a problem. Then there is intermediate care, which this is used to describe rehabilitation services that you may need. So maybe you have been injured and you need care from that injury, you've fallen, and you need somebody to be with you to provide day-to-day administration and help of all of those things, whether it's medication or just, keeping a watchful eye on you. And then lastly, there's skilled care, which is going to be you have a round the clock nurse that is there to take care of you, give you medication, and be sure that you are still doing okay. Maybe you're bedridden. A lot of times skilled care requires, or you're bedridden if you require skilled care. So those are the three different levels of care. I threw this slide in here. I thought this was pretty interesting. It's just some facts on life expectancy. A lot of times when we talk about long-term care, clients will say, oh, well, I hope I don't live that long to need long-term care. So in 2022, life expectancy at birth was 77 and a half years for the total US population. It increased by 1 year and 1 month from 76 and 4 months old in 2021. For males, life expectancy increased by 1 year and 3 months from 73 and a half in 2021 to 74 years old and 8 months in 2022. And for females, life expectancy increased by 9 months from 79 and 3 months in 2021 to 80 years old and 2 months in 2022. So one thing that I think is extremely important to note here, and I think all of us know that, is females tend to live longer than males. So, making sure that your spouse is taken care of no matter what happens, long-term care can help facilitate that. So how real is the risk? So, to my point earlier, how young is too young to start thinking about long-term care, or how old is too late to start thinking about long-term care? A lot of you all may know someone who already has it. Maybe you have it. Your children are starting to think about utilizing it, but my personal family story, my stepmother's mom needed care at a very young age that, we definitely would not have expected that coming. So a large number of people will need long-term care sometime during their lifetime. The risk is very real and unfortunately much more likely than most people think. People of all ages need long-term care. Older individuals are the primary users of long-term care services and support because functional disability increases with advancing age, as we know. But there is always early onset dementia and Alzheimer's, and, injuries that could occur that, you would require some type of skilled or intermediate level care for. So it's very important to start thinking about that at a young age while it's more affordable. I know that we meet with so many clients who wishes they would have listened to us when we were talking about long-term care for them at age 50, and they're now 75 and kicking themselves for not, doing that. So, how to use long-term care. Long-term care insurance is a risk-shifting tool that has absolutely taken off in the last decade. As we've seen from our review with the likelihood of need and the rising cost to providing long-term care, there's a very good reason for this. It can help fund the care that you and your family decide is appropriate, thus preserving choice, financial independence, and dignity. This can relieve family members both financially and emotionally if they don't have to face decisions that may deplete assets prematurely and worry about appropriate care being available. or potentially arguing about which assets need to be used to pay for that care. Having the money when it's needed can help preserve remaining personal assets for the second spouse or for the next generation, if that's appropriate in your situation. Keep in mind there are limits and exclusions to how long-term care is used and what is covered. Typically, you still have to qualify to use your long-term care policy. So usually with most long-term care policies, you have to be unable to complete 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living or be cognitively impaired, and, need that memory care and that, intermediate to skilled care help. The most important thing is if you have long-term care, you're probably going to be looking at places like the RUI Retirement Unlimited facilities, because those are self-pay facilities. And Cleo can speak to this a little bit, but when you have a long-term care policy, you're usually pushed to the top of the list for those facilities if there is a wait list, because you are self-pay, and businesses know that they're going to get that long-term care insurance coming in because it's through an insurance company. So Cleo, can you speak to a bit about how many of your facilities tend to have wait lists, and if they do have those wait lists, how important having long-term care is to push you kind of to the top of that wait list of potentially getting in if there is one?
It is an important factor to be able to have that information at your fingertips, especially if your adult children are helping you while you're making a decision in emergency. For them to have that information helps them better make a decision when they are touring or making a placement. And yourself, when you're making a decision about placement, you are able to have a very honest and transparent discussion with the executive directors of assisted living communities or placement communities you're looking at. So it gives you the valuable tools and resources to be prepared just in case of emergencies, but definitely to make the right decision at the time. And I know that our teams at RUI definitely know how to walk through and help you through those processes.
Very good. Thanks, Cleo. Moving on to how to finance long-term care. So, a lot of you on this call, maybe who already are living at an RUI or Retirement Unlimited facility, have long-term care in place. And if that's the case, you probably have the more traditional version of long-term care, where it was a bit more expensive. And if you don't need long-term care for any reason, you're paying a premium into that, for that plan every month. And if you don't need it, you lose that premium money, much like how your home insurance and car insurance work. Long-term care, like I said, has come a long, 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 long way. And, insurance companies and the public now understand the importance of why it's needed and how many people need long-term care. So maybe you're on the call and you're like, okay, fine, you've convinced me. I'll think about long-term care. How am I going to pay for it? So now there is something called asset-based long-term care. And all that does is it transfer assets on your balance sheet that you have set aside for an emergency to use for long-term care. Depending on the policy, those assets may double or triple if needed for long-term care. And if you do not end up needing long-term care, it passes to whomever your beneficiary is. So it is not a if you don't use it, you lose it situation. The biggest misconception that I hear, at least on a weekly basis, is okay, There's a supplement insurance plan that can pay for me, or Medicare is going to step in and pay for me. So let's take a timeout. The Broncos have called a timeout on their side since the Seahawks have already taken one. And let's talk about Medicare. So who knows the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, maybe? Medicare is, when I think of Medicare, I use, think of the word care. It is caring for people as they get old, and Medicaid is aiding people who maybe can't afford to care for themselves. So, Medicare is designed to cover most acute or short-term care expenses. So those are if you have been injured or you have some type of qualifying event. That you've been injured from, or that you need to stay in a rehab facility for, they will cover the first 90 to 100 days. And then after that, it's up to you. So generally, Medicare does not pay for long-term care. As we discussed before, most long-term care is considered to be custodial care. Custodial care is non-skilled personal care, such as help with activities of daily living like bathing, dressing, eating, getting in and out of a bed or a chair, using the bathroom, or being cognitively impaired. So it's very important to remember that you have to have some type of qualifying event for Medicare to agree to pay for your care. Next is Medicaid, which is a federal medical program that helps pay for people who may not, maybe can't afford long-term care or have not put a game plan or financial plan together in place to pay for their care. If you're on this call and thinking about a retirement unlimited facility, you probably do not fall in this category because those facilities are self-pay. But a Medicaid facility is going to be an extremely different experience than a retirement unlimited facility where you are self-pay. You are not going to be able to preserve your right for choice. It's not going to be as nice. There's probably not going to offer things like what we're doing now. You may not be able to stay with a spouse. You're going to be split up. And more importantly, your care may not, you may not receive the level of care that you need because those Medicaid facilities don't have enough employees or the properly trained employees to keep up with the care that you need. So, halftime show. Ann Taylor, do you know who is performing at the 2026 Super Bowl halftime show?
Bad Bunny. I don't think I know a single song, but
I
I'll
don't know
listen.
a single Bad Bunny song either, but I am excited to see it. I watched the Super Bowl for the snacks and the halftime show, so I'm sure
Me
it'll be
too.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Madeline, I think this is a great time for the halftime show to just talk about some of the tips and some of the things that we've heard from the chat. You talked
okay.
about making sure the wills, having contingencies updated
hmm
at least every 10 years. And we talked about talking to someone. If you're an adult child on a call, we're talking to someone about at the age of 50, long-term care insurance at the age of 50.
Yes.
And then a great analogy you used, I think, was Medicare. A good analogy is about care, and Medicaid is about aiding to help. So thank you for those tips before the halftime show.
Of course, of course. Yes, age of 50 is usually a good time to start thinking about, your care and your plan. Usually around 50, you are pretty tired of the daily 9 to 5 grind, and you're thinking about when you can start looking at retirement and get serious about what age you want to retire. The age of 50 is usually a point where we see clients who have, built up a significant amount of assets to where they can look at something like asset-based long-term care. So although they're still very young and in what we call the accumulation phase of their life, they're in their prime earning years. So they're starting to see the fruits of their labor of saving since they were 18, all these years, come to life and be able to have the freedom to, spend a little bit more freely, but still accomplish their goals for their financial plan. So that's why we usually recommend the age of 50, but we've even had a client in their mid 30s look at long-term care because he was young and knew he could qualify for it, and it was going to be cheap. So you're never too young to start thinking about it and looking at it. There are things like inflation riders to protect, yourself if you do purchase a long-term care policy at a very young age. So, halftime show is all about living in retirement. So you've put your game plan together, you've made it through your working years, you've made it to your big retirement party. Hoorah! What can you do to maximize your retirement? So there are 3 stages to retirement that you're going to hear me reference throughout the rest of our call today. That is your go-go years, which is the beginning stages of your retirement. You're traveling, you're hanging out with the grandkids, you're saying yes to everything, and you're excited to be retired. And then there are the slow-go years. You've stepped back. You maybe can't do everything that you used to be able to do, but you're still enjoying retirement. And then there are the no-go years, the years where, your kids or your family is regularly checking on you. You maybe have to look at a facility or utilize your long-term care plan. So living in retirement, the, things that you can do to set yourself up for those slow go and no go years is regularly check in with your financial professional. So your advisor, your quarterback, so to speak. So check in with them at minimum on an annual basis. Look at all of your accounts, and if you're still on track, the way that you guys had set your game plan or financial plan up to begin with. Introduce your children to your quarterback and your coaching team. It's extremely important to introduce your children to your advisor and your estate planning team. And the reason that I say that is it is a much more pleasant experience if your children know who to call when that time comes. Maybe they don't need to know everything about your plan quite yet, but at least make sure they're comfortable with who to reach out to and they trust that person just as much as you do. And then put together your game plan binder. So your playbook is what I like to call it. One thing that we recommend our clients to do is, every year print out your annual statement and put it in a binder for all of your accounts, whether that's your investment account, your life insurance, policies, your banking, your savings, money markets, any CDs that you may have. Put together your game plan binder. Have all of those statements in there so your heirs or your children know exactly where to find them. And additionally, on those statements, write a note of who is in charge of those assets and who to contact to obtain those assets. Another thing that I would add in there is a copy of that will and your power of attorney and medical directive. So all that your, children or executor needs is your game plan binder. I have so many clients who have put this together and, like I said, have had a much more pleasant experience in clients who have not put this together and they're still trying to close estates years later because they have found things that they did not necessarily know about. So when you have the time to put this together, it's extremely important to do so. And lastly, have fun, enjoy retirement. You've saved this whole time. So have fun, enjoy time with your family, enjoy time traveling, and put that financial plan to use. All right, we are in the third quarter. We're almost through the game here, coming back from halftime, and you have discovered, or maybe your heirs or children have discovered, that you need care. So our first down is step one, you need care. One thing that Cleo told me a couple weeks ago, which made a ton of sense, but was extremely shocking for me to hear, was that her busiest time is the end of the year, that November through January time frame, because children and families are coming to town to visit with their parents, grandparents, loved ones, and figuring out that things may not be all kosher like they thought they were. And to, they've got to panic while they're already in town, or they've had an emergency situation, a fall, and they've come in town, and they've got to panic to find a facility for their loved ones to stay at so they can continue on with their own lives. So step one, if your loved ones have discovered you need care, or maybe you're feeling like I would like to, start living in an independent living facility. I don't necessarily need care, but, I want to have a little bit more people and community to rally around, as well as maybe my home base is too much for me to keep up with on a daily basis. So research facilities, meet with people like Cleo who know a lot of what they're talking about, and decide the best place that you feel most comfortable and what feels like home, or the best place that is going to accommodate your needs. Meet with your care coordinator, whether that's somebody like Cleo at Woodland Hills, or a care coordinator they have there, or your, financial advisor. I want to start looking at facilities. How can you best set me up for success based on my financial plan to do so? And then lastly, refer to your game plan binder. And all of those facilities or in-home nursing staff are going to request to see your assets, and what you have to make sure you can afford to pay for that care. So that game plan binder is going to have all of those legal documents that you need to prove that you have those assets. So once you have discovered that you may need to either live in an independent living facility, have care come into your home, or maybe you need to go into a rehabilitation facility, it's important to take a look at your financial, plan. So as I've said before, there's 3 stages to retirement. There are your go-go years, your slow-go years, and your no-go years. It's time to transition your growth-based portfolio to more of an income-based allocation. So a safer allocation may be one that is going to provide you a steady income that's guaranteed to you, that, places like Retirement Unlimited facilities know is always going to be there to guarantee your room or your apartment. The easiest way to accomplish this is once you've researched those facilities and figured out how much money you need coming in every month, sit with your quarterback, your financial professional, your advisor, their team, and say, okay, this is how much I need every month. This is what I have coming in already in Social Security, pension, etc. You know, there's a gap here. Where can I pull from that's going to best make up that gap? Lastly is making sure you're asking questions about what type of fees that you have on your account. So we all know that as advisors, we have to charge fees to get paid. But a lot of times investments have built-in fees or expenses in those investments that don't necessarily go to directly to your advisor. So, are there high expense ratios on your investments? Or are you in an insurance product that has charges like a mortality and expense charge? Are you looking at something that is going to have what we call a rider, which pays you a lifetime income? What is the fee for that? How can we slim those fees down to just what is necessary so I am, making the most of my money and to pay for my care and to maybe leave for a loved one or a charitable organization or whomever it may be? Those are extremely important questions to ask about hidden fees. Almost, everything has hidden fees that we don't necessarily, you as the consumer don't necessarily know about. So your advisor can speak to that a bit more. Next is our third down. So working with your power of attorney, your children, care coordinator, or spouse to facilitate your plan. So at this point, you've got your game plan binder together. You've found the facility that you're going to go, or you've found the company that's going to provide you in-home care. We've put together your budget. We have that income flowing in every month. Keep in contact with those people so they know where that income is coming from and how to obtain it, and trust the professionals in the process. Check in annually. So check in and plan for your care on an annual basis. It's hard to think about biting off the rest of your life in one chew. So reevaluate your situation yearly and decide if you like the facility you're at, if you're getting the care that you need, and if you can continue to afford to stay at that facility. Another scenario that Cleo's talked with me about is maybe your spouse has passed away and you've got to step down to a smaller apartment, or go from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom. There is absolutely no shame in that. That is being aware of your plan and your surroundings. So take pride in the fact that you are responsible enough to be able to pay for your own care and not rely on Medicaid or family members to pay for that care for you. And fourth quarter, we're almost to the end of the game, is all about leaving a legacy. So for spouses, if you have passed away, I don't know if any of you remember the statistic I mentioned earlier, but women tend to live longer than men. And women also tend to let men make a lot of the financial decisions in their relationship. So if that is the case, ensuring that you are educated on everything you have in the game plan binder and understand your spouse, understand, what it is that you both have, whether that is for the husband or the wife. So making sure everybody is informed and both spouses trust the financial professionals that you work with. So all they have to do is worry about grieving, their loved one and not about what about how I'm going to pay to afford to stay in this apartment or stay at a retirement unlimited facility? And you've left a legacy. If you've followed all of these steps, maybe you've left money to your children, grandchildren, charitable organizations, but take pride in the fact that you successfully prepared yourself for retirement. That is all I have for you guys. I know that Ann Taylor says that the Seahawks just won our Super Bowl that we just went through. So hopefully that's the case for her. I have some contact information here, so feel free to take a picture of that. If you're not local here to Roanoke, we can always meet with you virtually or come and see you depending on where you are. We do travel, but be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Madeline, wow, what a full Super Bowl today. Shoo! I tell you what, but first of all, thank you for helping our team, our community neighbors and residents think about putting that game plan binder together. The game plan binder you discussed will help us from beginning to end, pre-game show to halftime show to the end, to do nothing but be on the winning team. We could not have done this without you, Madeline and Taylor and Michelle today. And we really want to say thank you for being our kickoff series in January 2026 for RUI Informed. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for helping families and every individual. May you continue to be successful in your world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Cleo.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And to all who attended today, please join us for our next RUI Informed, where you will find out more about how to be prepared and to continue to be a resource for your family, your loved one, or yourself. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.